Outside his glittering Christmas party, the cold billionaire stopped breathing. His ex was standing there, clutching two twins he never knew existed. "Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter's Stories. May the Almighty bless every woman with a peace that softens every sorrow, a strength that carries every burden with grace, and a light so pure it warms the world around her. May your hearts be protected from every hurt, your homes filled with quiet comfort, and your days overflow with blessings that follow you like a gentle shadow. You are the ones who sacrifice silently, love endlessly, and rise even when life tries to break you. I pray the doors of mercy open for you, the paths of goodness stretch before you, and every prayer you whisper in loneliness be answered with kindness. May joy return to your hands, may healing rest on your shoulders, and may you always walk wrapped in divine love." Sam Brown had spent 5 years building an empire on the ashes of the only woman he'd ever loved. But the ghost standing in the snowfall outside his Christmas party was flesh, blood, and holding the family he'd taught her she'd never deserve. The penthouse glittered like a diamond suspended over Manhattan. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors where the city's elite celebrated Sam's freedom. His divorce from Lillian had finally been finalized after years of public humiliation and private torture. The woman his mother had chosen for him had nearly destroyed everything he'd built, and tonight was supposed to mark his resurrection. Sam stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, champagne glass forgotten in his hand, staring at the impossible sight below. Through the swirling snow, she stood on the sidewalk, like a figure from a dream he'd buried deep. Abigail Grace, the name he hadn't allowed himself to speak in 5 years. The woman he'd abandoned for family approval and inherited wealth. She wore a black coat that must have cost her months of saving, her natural hair pulled back in an elegant style. But it was the two small boys clutching her hands that made Sam's chest constrict. They couldn't have been older than 4 or 5, dressed in matching coats, their faces turned up toward their mother as she stood frozen in the snowfall. A man stormed out of the building, Dominic Ashford, a wealthy investor Sam's business partner had introduced around earlier that year. Sam watched in horror as Dominic climbed into a waiting car without a backward glance, leaving Abigail and the children standing in the falling snow. The exhaust from the departing vehicle hung in the cold air like a ghost. "Sam, darling, you're ignoring your guests." His mother's voice cut through his shock. Eleanor Brown appeared at his elbow, elegant and cold as the winter night. She wore diamonds that probably cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. "Come back to the party. The mayor is asking for you." "That woman down there," Sam said quietly, unable to look away. "Do you recognize her?" Eleanor followed his gaze, and her expression hardened into something cruel. "That's the girl I paid to leave you alone. Apparently she learned nothing from our conversation. I heard through the society pages that she trapped Dominic Ashford the same way she tried to trap you. Some women never learn their place." Sam's blood ran cold. The champagne glass in his hand suddenly felt heavy as lead. "What do you mean you paid her?" "Years ago, darling. She was becoming a problem, all those romantic notions filling your head. You were talking about proposing, for heaven's sake, to a girl with no family, no connections, no future. I gave her money to disappear and she took it. Quite eagerly, I might add. Now she's someone else's disaster." Eleanor sipped her champagne, completely unconcerned. "Dominic just announced their divorce inside the party. Quite the scene. He said he couldn't continue living a lie. Something about the children not being his problem anymore. Poor taste, really, announcing it at your celebration." Sam felt the floor shift beneath him. Every assumption he'd built his life on was crumbling. "You paid Abigail to leave me. I saved your future. You were infatuated with that girl, ready to throw away your inheritance for someone so far beneath our family. I did what any mother would do. I protected you from yourself." She touched his arm, her fingers cold even through his suit jacket. "Now stop brooding and come greet your guests. This is your night." Before Sam could respond, Before he could process the magnitude of his mother's betrayal, his business partner approached with an uncomfortable expression. Gerald Thorne had been Sam's mentor for years, a man he respected. "Sam, I apologize profusely for my nephew's behavior. Dominic has always been impulsive, but announcing a divorce at your party was beyond inappropriate. My sister is mortified." "The woman," Sam managed, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. "Abigail, is she still downstairs?" "I believe she left moments ago. Took the children and got into a taxi. Terrible situation, really. The marriage never should have happened. My sister tried to warn Dominic, but he wouldn't listen. Now he's finally seen sense." Gerald shook his head. "The woman came with baggage, you understand. Children from questionable circumstances. My nephew tried to make it work, but family pressure finally opened his eyes." Sam looked back out the window, but the sidewalk was empty. Only snow remained, falling softly on the space where she'd stood. The city lights blurred the edges of the storm, making everything look surreal. 5 years ago, he'd chosen this life, this party, these people, his mother's approval. He'd chosen money over love, security over soul. He'd convinced himself it was the right decision, the mature decision. Now he'd seen what that decision had cost them both. The party continued around him, laughter and conversation creating a wall of sound that felt suffocating. Women in designer gowns air-kissed each other. Men discussed stock portfolios and golf handicaps. Everyone celebrated Sam's freedom from Lillian, the woman who'd made his life hell with her affairs and spending and public cruelty. They toasted his resilience. They congratulated him on his escape. None of them knew he was the villain in someone else's story. "Sir," his assistant appeared at his side, young and efficient. "I have the information you requested about tomorrow's charity brunch. The Ashford family will be in attendance. Protocol requires you to sit at the head table with the sponsors. Your mother has already confirmed the seating arrangements." "I'll be there," Sam interrupted. He had to see her again. He had to know what his mother had done, what had happened in the 5 years since he'd let Eleanor convince him that Abigail wasn't good enough for the Brown family name. He had to understand how a woman with no connections had ended up married to and abandoned by Dominic Ashford. As his guests laughed and danced, as champagne flowed and deals were made, Sam stood at the window and watched the snow fall on the empty sidewalk. His reflection stared back at him, successful, wealthy, respected. A man who'd built an empire, a man who'd survived a toxic marriage, a man everyone in this room admired. He barely recognized himself. Tomorrow, he would face the woman he'd destroyed and the life he'd thrown away. Tonight, he could only stand in the wreckage of his choices and wonder if redemption was even possible. Somewhere in this city, Abigail was putting those 2 boys to bed in whatever home she'd managed to build from the ruins he'd left her in. She was carrying a child whose father had just publicly rejected them all, and Sam had been the one who taught her that men like him always chose money over love. The ghost at his gates had been real, and she'd been suffering while he celebrated his freedom from a loveless marriage he'd chosen over her. The snow continued to fall, covering the tracks of her departure, erasing the evidence that she'd ever been there at all. Chapter 2. The Anatomy of Cruelty. The country club's crystal chandeliers had witnessed 1,000 society scandals, but the woman walking in with her head high and her son's hands in hers was about to teach Manhattan's elite what dignity looked like in ruins. The brunch was mandatory, one of those society obligations Sam normally avoided. The annual winter charity event brought together old money, new money, and everyone desperate to be seen with either. But today, he'd arrived early, positioning himself where he could see the entrance. Eleanor sat across from him, imperious in pearls and prejudice, completely unaware that her son's world had shifted on its axis the night before. When Abigail walked in, the room didn't fall silent. That would have been too dramatic. Instead, conversations shifted in pitch, eyes cut sideways, and the volume of whispers increased just enough to create a wall of judgment around her. Sam watched it happen, watched society close ranks against a woman who'd committed the sin of not knowing her place. She was breathtaking. The simple navy dress she wore probably came from a department store clearance rack, but she carried herself like royalty. Her natural hair was styled elegantly, her makeup minimal but perfect. The twin boys walked beside her, well-behaved and beautiful, their mixed heritage evident in their warm brown skin and curly hair. They wore matching sweaters that looked handmade, probably by Abigail herself during whatever few hours she had free. Sam felt something break open in his chest as he watched her scan the room for a safe place to sit. She wasn't looking for allies. Women like her knew better. She was looking for a corner, somewhere she could feed her sons and leave without causing more damage to her already shattered reputation. "That's her," Eleanor murmured, not bothering to lower her voice. "I can't believe she has the audacity to show her face here. Someone must have invited her out of pity. How embarrassing for the hosts." Sam's business partner's wife, Constance Ashford, rose from her table with predatory grace. She was Dominic's mother, a woman who'd clawed her way up from middle-class roots and now defended her position with vicious determination. Her face bore the expression of a woman about to commit socially acceptable murder. Abigail had found a table in the corner, far from the main gathering where the important families held court. She was helping her sons into their chairs, her movements gentle and practiced, when Constance approached. The older woman's voice carried across the room, designed to humiliate, pitched perfectly so everyone could hear without appearing to shout. "Miss Grace, I'm surprised you had the nerve to attend today." Abigail looked up, and Sam saw her spine straighten. Her hand moved protectively to her son's shoulders. "Mrs. Ashford, good morning. I think we need to clarify something for everyone here. Those children you're parading around as Ashfords? Everyone in this room knows the truth about their parentage. My son made a mistake marrying you, but he's corrected it now. These boys have no claim to our family name." The twins looked up at the harsh tone, confusion crossing their young faces. Harry, the quieter of the two, reached for his mother's hand. Henry's lower lip trembled. They were too young to understand the words, but old enough to recognize hatred when they heard it. Abigail stood slowly, deliberately, placing herself between Constance and her sons like a warrior queen, protecting her heirs. When she spoke, her voice was steady and clear enough for the entire room to hear, but somehow still managed to sound like she was simply having a private conversation. "Mrs. Ashford, your son married me 3 years ago, knowing everything about my past. He said he wanted a family. We built one together through honesty, commitment, and love. These boys are his biological sons, conceived through fertility treatment because I had complications from a previous pregnancy loss. When you convinced him I wasn't good enough for your family name, he chose you over them, but biology doesn't change because you're uncomfortable with it. How dare you suggest, how dare I what? Exist? Raise my children? Come to a public event I was invited to by the charity foundation, not your family?" Abigail's composure was devastating in its perfection. "Your son divorced me because you convinced him that love was less important than social standing. You told him these boys would hold him back, that I would embarrass him, that my past made me unworthy of the Ashford name, but my sons are still his sons. Biology doesn't care about your prejudices, Mrs. Ashford." She leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping but somehow still audible. "If you have something to say about their parentage, say it to their faces. Tell Harry and Henry they're not real Ashfords. Explain to them why their father stopped coming home. Tell them why their last name isn't good enough anymore. Go ahead." The silence that followed was absolute. Constance's face flushed red, her mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. She had no response that wouldn't make her look exactly as cruel as she was. Around the room, women shifted uncomfortably. Even the most hardened society matriarchs looked away. Abigail gathered her son's hands and turned toward the exit, head high, spine straight, refusing to run. She moved with the grace of someone who'd survived worse than gossip and lived to tell the tale. She had to pass Sam's table to reach the door. Their eyes met, and the recognition in hers was like a physical blow. She stopped, and for a moment neither of them breathed. Sam saw everything in that look, the girl she'd been, the woman she'd become, the pain his choices had carved into her soul. Mr. Brown. Her voice was cold enough to freeze the champagne in everyone's glasses. Still letting your mother choose your life? She turned to Eleanor, and Sam watched his mother's face pale for the first time in his memory. Abigail's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. Thank you for teaching me that love is a luxury poor girls can't afford. I learned my lesson, clearly not well enough since I made the same mistake twice. But I'm a quick study, Mrs. Brown. Third time's the charm, they say. Next time someone offers me love, I'll remember it always comes with a price I can't afford to pay. Before Sam could speak, before he could apologize or explain or beg, she walked away. But as she turned, her coat shifted, and Sam saw it clearly. The unmistakable curve of pregnancy, far enough along that she had to be 7 or 8 months. Another child, another life Dominic had abandoned. The room erupted in whispers the moment the door closed behind her. Eleanor turned to Sam with barely concealed satisfaction. You see, she's pregnant again, probably why Dominic finally ended it. The woman is a walking disaster. Can you imagine if you'd actually married her? Your life would be that chaos. Sam stood abruptly, his chair scraping against marble with a sound that cut through the gossip like a gunshot. That disaster is a woman you destroyed. That disaster is carrying a child whose father just abandoned them all in public. That disaster has more grace and strength than anyone in this room, including me. Sam, sit down. I'm done, Mother. Done with this. Done with you choosing who I love and who I leave. Done pretending that money makes us better than people who actually have hearts. He threw his napkin on the table like a gauntlet. I hope you're proud of what you've created. I hope you sleep well knowing you destroyed 2 lives because they weren't good enough for your standards. He walked out, ignoring Eleanor's shocked protests and the explosion of gossip behind him. This would be the scandal of the season. Sam Brown publicly defying his mother, defending the woman she'd paid to disappear. Outside, the valet was helping Abigail and the boys into a taxi. Sam ran down the marble steps, his expensive shoes slipping slightly on the winter-wet stone, calling her name like a prayer he'd forgotten how to say. She turned, and the exhaustion and pain, evident in every line of her body, made him feel like the smallest man alive. "Please," Sam said, breathless. "Please, just give me 5 minutes. Let me explain." Abigail looked at her sons, already settled in the taxi's back seat, their faces pressed against the window watching their mother. Then, back at Sam. Her eyes were dry, but something in them looked permanently broken. "I gave you 5 years, Sam Brown. I gave you my heart, my trust, my future. I have nothing left to give you, not even 5 minutes." She climbed into the taxi with the careful movements of a woman in her final trimester, one hand supporting her belly, the other holding the door frame. Sam reached out, but didn't touch her, didn't dare. "I didn't know what my mother did. Does it matter? You still chose her over me. The money, the approval, the life she wanted for you, you chose all of it. She just made it easier to live with yourself." Abigail's voice cracked on the last word. "Goodbye, Sam." The taxi pulled away, and Sam stood in the cold morning air, watching it disappear into traffic. Doormen and valets pretended not to stare. Inside, the brunch continued without him. His mother was probably already spinning the narrative, explaining away his outburst, protecting the family reputation. But this time, Sam wouldn't let Abigail vanish into whatever hell she'd been surviving. This time, he would find her. This time, he would fix what his cowardice and his mother's cruelty had broken, even if it took the rest of his life, even if she never forgave him. He owed her that much. Chapter 3. The Price of Perfection. Sam Brown had spent 5 years believing he'd made the practical choice, but the pregnant woman standing in the winter wind was the bill come due, and the currency was regret. Finding Abigail took 3 days and every private investigator Sam could hire. She wasn't trying to hide. She simply had nowhere permanent to be. The address they finally located was a women's shelter on the edge of the city, the kind of place Sam had driven past 1,000 times without seeing. The building was clean but worn, its facade speaking of limited budgets and unlimited need. He sat in his car outside for over an hour, watching the building like a stalker, hating himself for it, but unable to leave. Women came and went, some with children, all with the worn expressions of people surviving rather than living. They carried plastic bags from dollar stores and bundled against the cold in coats too thin for December. When Abigail finally emerged, holding Harry and Henry's hands, Sam's throat tightened until he could barely breathe. She moved carefully, her pregnancy making her balance precarious on the icy sidewalk. The boys stayed close, protective of their mother, in that way children become when they've seen her struggle. She was heading to work, he realized, 8 months pregnant, living in a shelter, and she was walking to a job. He followed at a distance as she walked the boys several blocks to a small daycare, one of those community centers that charged on a sliding scale. She kissed them goodbye, lingering with each one, before continuing alone through the cold morning. The diner was 3 blocks away. Sam watched through the plate glass window as she tied on an apron over her pregnant belly and began taking orders. She smiled at customers, refilled coffee, carried trays that looked too heavy for someone in her condition. She moved efficiently despite obvious exhaustion, muscle memory carrying her through the motions of survival. Sam ordered black coffee and watched her work for 2 hours, each minute sharpening the knife of his guilt. She never sat down. Her feet had to be killing her. Once, she paused by the kitchen door, hand pressed to her lower back, face tight with pain. Then she straightened and kept going. This was what his choice had created. This was the life Eleanor's money had bought. He waited until her shift ended before approaching. Abigail walked out into the winter evening, exhausted, her coat pulled tight against the cold, and stopped dead when she saw him leaning against the diner's brick wall. "You need to stop following me." Her voice was flat, too tired for real anger. "I need to talk to you." "No, you need to ease your conscience. That's not my problem." She started walking, her gait slightly uneven from pregnancy and exhaustion, and Sam fell into step beside her. "My mother paid you to leave. She told me." Finally admitted it. Abigail laughed, bitter and broken, the sound catching in her throat like broken glass. "She told you? After 5 years, Eleanor Brown developed a conscience. She was bragging about it. She said she saved me from making a mistake." Sam grabbed her arm gently, stopping her on the cold sidewalk. "Abigail, please. What did she do to you?" She pulled free, but stopped walking. Around them, the city moved. Cars passing, people rushing home from work, the normal rhythm of evening. They stood like an island in the current. "Your mother came to my apartment. You were at work, planning our future, talking about how you'd handle telling your family about us. I was pregnant." The world tilted. "What?" "Pregnant. 8 weeks. I was waiting for the right time to tell you." Abigail's voice was remarkably steady considering the words that came out. "Eleanor showed up with an envelope of cash and a speech about knowing my place. She said you'd never actually marry me, that you were just amusing yourself until someone appropriate came along. She said she was saving both of us from an ugly scene. I didn't know. She told me if I really loved you, I'd take the money and disappear. That watching you sacrifice your inheritance and your future for a poor girl and an unwanted baby would destroy you. That you'd resent me eventually, hate me for trapping you." Abigail's hand moved unconsciously to her pregnant belly, protecting the child she carried now as she hadn't been able to protect the one she'd lost. "She said the kindest thing I could do was let you go." Sam felt physically sick. "The baby." "I miscarried at 11 weeks, alone in a clinic bathroom because I couldn't afford the emergency room. The doctor said stress and malnutrition contributed to it. Your mother's money didn't last long, not with medical bills and trying to restart my life." She looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. "I lost your baby while you were probably planning your wedding to whoever Eleanor chose next." Lillian. Her name was Lillian, and she made my life hell for 4 years." Sam ran his hands through his hair, wanting to hit something, to break something as broken as he felt. "But that's not... I can't compare my misery to yours. I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't raise the dead, Sam. Sorry doesn't give me back the years I spent believing I wasn't good enough for anyone." Abigail started walking again, slower now, one hand supporting her back. "I met Dominic 2 years after you. I was working 3 jobs, barely surviving. He was kind, patient. He knew about you, about the miscarriage, all of it. He said he'd give me the family I'd lost." The boys are his biological sons. After the miscarriage, I had complications, scar tissue, damage. We went through fertility treatment to conceive Harry and Henry. They were our miracle babies, proof that maybe I could have the family I'd always wanted. Her voice softened when she said their names. Dominic was a good father at first, present, loving. Then his family started in. The boys were too dark. I was too poor. My past was too scandalous. They poisoned him drop by drop until he looked at his own sons and saw embarrassments instead of blessings. They'd reached a park, one of those small urban spaces with bare trees and frozen benches. Abigail sat down heavily, her body demanding rest. Sam sat beside her, maintaining careful distance. "This baby," she touched her belly again, that protective gesture mothers make, "was supposed to be proof we could overcome anything, natural conception against medical odds. Dominic said it was fate showing us we belonged together. Then his mother started implying the baby couldn't possibly be his, that I must have been with someone else. He demanded a paternity test at 6 months. It came back his. He still filed for divorce. The announcement at my party. He wanted me to terminate the pregnancy to make the divorce cleaner. Said a 3rd child would complicate custody arrangements. When I refused, he announced it publicly to humiliate me into compliance. Thought if he made me desperate enough, I'd do anything." Abigail's laugh was hollow. "He doesn't know me very well. I've been desperate before. I survived it." Sam wanted to touch her, to offer comfort, but knew he'd lost that right years ago. "Where are you staying?" "Shelter for now. I'm on waiting lists for subsidized housing, but that takes months. I work as many shifts as they'll give me at the diner, save every penny for when the baby comes. The shelter has rules about how long I can stay, especially with 3 children. After I deliver, I'll have maybe 2 weeks before I need to find something else." "Let me help." "No." "Abigail, no." She stood with effort, her voice sharp. "I don't need your guilt money. I don't need to be another one of your charitable projects. I needed you 5 years ago when your mother was calling me a gold digger while I cried in that clinic. I needed Dominic when his family was calling my children mistakes. I don't need men anymore. I have my sons. I'll have my daughter. That's enough." "It's not enough. You're 8 months pregnant, working yourself to exhaustion, living in a shelter." "And whose fault is that?" The anger finally broke through her exhaustion. "You taught me that love was conditional, that when things got hard, when family disapproved, when the choice was between me or comfort, you'd choose comfort. Dominic reinforced that lesson, so forgive me if I don't trust the man who started this pattern to suddenly break it." She walked away, her stride uneven but determined. Sam sat on the frozen bench and watched her go, knowing she was right. He'd been the first domino, the original sin in her story of abandonment. But he'd also been young, stupid, and under his mother's thumb. Dominic had been a grown man who'd promised her the world and then crushed it because his family disapproved. They were both guilty, but Sam had laid the groundwork for every man who'd hurt her after. His phone buzzed. Eleanor, demanding to know where he'd been, the board meeting he'd missed, the dinner party tonight he was expected to attend, all the obligations of his carefully constructed life pulling at him like chains. Sam looked at the phone, then at the direction Abigail had gone. For 5 years, he'd chosen obligation over love. For 5 years, he'd let his mother dictate his choices. He turned off the phone and started walking in the direction she'd gone. He wouldn't lose her again. Not to pride, not to his mother, not to Abigail's entirely justified anger. This time, he'd fight. even if she never forgave him, even if all he could do was ensure she and those children survived. It was the very least he owed her. Chapter 4. The Fortress of Survival. Abigail Grace had rebuilt herself from ruins twice, but the billionaire standing in the women's shelter doorway would learn that some fortresses were built to keep out exactly men like him. Tracking Abigail to the shelter felt like crossing into another world. Sam had lived his entire life in Manhattan, but the neighborhoods his driver navigated to were unfamiliar territory. The shelter itself was housed in a converted school building, its windows protected by bars that were meant to keep danger out, but looked like they kept desperation in. He waited outside for 3 days before approaching, not because he couldn't find the courage, but because he needed to understand her life before disrupting it further. He watched her leave for work before dawn, return to collect Harry and Henry from daycare, help them with homework in the shelter's common room, visible through the front windows. He saw her ration food at dinner, giving the boys extra from her plate when she thought no one was looking. On the 3rd day, he couldn't take it anymore. He approached the shelter's director, a woman named Teresa, who'd spent her entire career helping women rebuild from nothing. She listened to his story with the kind of look that could strip paint. You want to help her? Pay her back rent somewhere safe, set up a fund for medical care. But you don't get to see her unless she agrees. You don't get updates unless she allows it. You're not buying access to her life. Sam wrote a check for more than Abigail would earn in a year, with instructions to use it for housing deposits, medical care, whatever she needed. Teresa took it but didn't thank him. Rich men love to throw money at problems they created. It's the daily showing up that matters, Mr. Brown. Can you do that? I'm going to try. He left his card, his number, a letter he'd rewritten a dozen times, explaining everything his mother had done, everything he'd failed to do. Then he went home to his penthouse and didn't sleep, wondering if Abigail would call or if that letter would end up in the trash where it belonged. She showed up at his office a week later. Sam's assistant buzzed him mid-morning. Sir, there's a woman here who won't give her name. She says you're expecting her, but you don't have any appointments. Send her in. Abigail walked through his door like a queen entering enemy territory. She wore the same worn coat, but underneath it, Sam glimpsed a new dress, probably purchased with money from Teresa. Her pregnancy was even more pronounced than before, the baby clearly preparing for arrival soon. She threw his letter on his desk. The envelope was worn, like she'd opened and read it many times. How dare you? Abigail, how dare you go behind my back to the shelter director? How dare you leave money like that some kind of solution to what you broke? Her voice shook with fury. Your mother did this, threw money at the problem and expected me to disappear. You're doing the exact same thing. Sam stood, came around the desk but didn't approach her. It's not guilt money, it's what I owe you. For what? For your child that never got born? For the 5 years I spent believing I wasn't worth fighting for? She was crying now, angry tears she tried to wipe away. You can't buy your way out of this, Sam. You can't just throw cash at me and expect it to fix what your cowardice destroyed. I know, but I can make sure you're safe now, that those boys are safe, that the baby you're carrying has a fighting chance. Sam took a risk and stepped closer. Teresa said the shelter can only keep you for another month, especially with a newborn. Where will you go after that? I'll figure it out. I always do. You shouldn't have to figure it out alone. Abigail sat down abruptly in one of his office chairs, exhaustion winning over pride. For a long moment she was silent, and Sam watched emotions war across her face. Anger, pain, exhaustion, something that might have been longing before she crushed it. Why are you really doing this? She finally asked. What do you want from me? Nothing. I want to give you what I should have given you 5 years ago. Support, protection, someone who doesn't leave when things get hard. Sam sat across from her. I can't undo the past, but I can try to make the future less brutal. And when you get tired of playing savior, when I'm not interesting anymore, when your next girlfriend doesn't like having your pregnant ex-girlfriend and her kids as a charity case, then I deal with their problem, not yours. Abigail, I'm not doing this to win you back. I'm doing this because you're carrying a baby and raising two boys, and you deserve better than a shelter and a diner job that's destroying your body. She looked at him for a long time, searching his face for the lie, the catch, the inevitable disappointment. Teresa said you set up a fund for housing and medical care and childcare when you need it, and anything else that comes up. I can't pay you back. I'm not asking you to. This doesn't mean I forgive you. I know. This doesn't mean we're friends. I know. This just means I'm desperate enough to accept help from the man who started all of this. Her voice broke on the last words, and Sam felt the truth of it like a knife. I know, and I'm sorry. For all of it. For being too weak to fight my mother. For letting you go. For every moment of the last 5 years that you suffered because I chose wrong. Abigail stood, moving toward the door, then stopped. Teresa found me an apartment. Small, but it's mine. Move-in is next week. The boys are excited. They've never had their own room before. That's good. That's really good. Don't come by. Don't show up unannounced. If I need something, I'll call Teresa and she'll contact you. She looked back at him. I mean it, Sam. You don't get access to my life just because you're paying bills. I understand. She left, and Sam sat in his office staring at the closed door. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even the beginning of trust, but it was permission to help, and that was more than he deserved. Over the next month, Sam got updates from Teresa. Abigail had moved into a small apartment in a safe neighborhood. The boys were thriving, excited about their own space. She was still working at the diner, but fewer hours now, preparing for the baby's arrival. Sam didn't contact her directly, respecting her boundaries even though it killed him. He paid every bill that came through Teresa without question. Rent, utilities, medical copays, groceries when the budget got tight. When Teresa called him late one Tuesday night, his heart stopped. She's in labor. Early, about 2 weeks before her due date. She's at Metro General and she's asking for me to bring the boys. I'll meet you there. Sam, she didn't ask for you. I know, but I'm coming anyway. The hospital was chaos. The maternity ward on a busy night. Nurses rushing, families waiting. Sam found Teresa in a waiting room with Harry and Henry. The boys looked small and scared, clutching stuffed animals someone had given them. Mr. Sam! Henry launched himself at Sam's legs before Teresa could stop him. Mama's having the baby. The doctor said she's working really hard. Sam knelt down to their level, ignoring Teresa's disapproving look. Your mama is the strongest person I've ever met. She's going to be just fine. Can we see her? Harry asked, voice small. Let me check. A nurse directed him to Abigail's room. He knocked softly, and a voice he barely recognized as hers, exhausted and pain-filled, told him to come in. Abigail was in a hospital bed, connected to monitors, sweating and pale but conscious. She looked at him with surprise that quickly turned to understanding. Teresa called you. The boys are here. They're worried about you. Sam stayed by the door, not presuming to come closer. What do you need? I need... She stopped, gasping through a contraction. When it passed, she looked at him with desperation replacing her usual guard. I can't do this alone. I thought I could, but I'm scared, and Dominic isn't here, and the boys need someone, because if something goes wrong... Nothing's going to go wrong. You don't know that. The monitors beeped faster as her heart rate spiked. I could lose her. I could lose everything. And Harry and Henry would be alone because I have no one. No family close by, no friends who could take them, no safety net. Sam crossed the room without thinking. They're not alone. You're not alone. I'm here. You don't even know them. I know they're scared. I know Harry tries to be brave for his brother. I know Henry checks on you every 10 minutes. I know they've been abandoned by every man who was supposed to protect them, and I won't be another name on that list. A nurse came in, checked monitors, told Abigail she was progressing well. Baby should be here in the next few hours. You're doing great. After she left, Abigail grabbed Sam's hand. Stay, please, just until she's here. The boys need someone if... Just stay. I'm not leaving. Sam spent the next hours running between Abigail's room and the waiting area with the boys. He explained what was happening in terms they could understand, bought them snacks from vending machines, read them stories from hospital pamphlets. Teresa watched him with calculating eyes, but said nothing. When the nurse finally came to get him, saying Abigail was asking for him, Sam's hands were shaking. Abigail was holding a tiny baby wrapped in hospital blankets. She looked exhausted but transcendent, tears streaming down her face as she stared at her daughter. "She's perfect," Abigail whispered. "Ruby Grace, born at 7 pounds, 2 ounces, healthy and strong." Sam stood in the doorway, throat tight. "She's beautiful." "The boys, can they come in?" "I'll get them." He brought Harry and Henry back, and they climbed carefully onto the hospital bed, staring at their new sister with wonder. Ruby made small noises, and Henry giggled. "She's so tiny." "You were both this tiny once," Abigail said softly. She looked up at Sam, standing awkwardly by the door. "Thank you, for staying with them, for being here. There's nowhere else I'd be." They stayed for an hour, the boys asking a million questions, Abigail answering patiently despite obvious exhaustion. Finally, a nurse suggested the boys should go home and rest, come back tomorrow. Sam helped gather their things. "I'll take them home, get them to bed, bring them back in the morning." Abigail nodded, too tired to argue. As Sam was leaving with the boys, she called his name. "Sam, you were right about not having to do this alone. Thank you." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a crack in the wall she'd built, and Sam would take it. Chapter 5. The Slow Thaw. Sam Brown's penthouse had hosted galas, supermodels and senators, but the woman recovering in his guest room and her 2 boys in Spider-Man pajamas were the only residents who'd ever made it feel like home. The discharge from the hospital brought complications Sam hadn't anticipated. Abigail's new apartment wasn't ready. The landlord had found code violations that needed repair before move-in. The shelter wouldn't take her back with a newborn. Their insurance didn't allow it. She had nowhere to go. Sam made the offer before Teresa could suggest anything else. "Stay with me, just until the apartment is ready. I have the space, staff who can help, and the boys won't have to change schools." Abigail, still weak from delivery, looked at her sleeping daughter. "This is temporary. Completely temporary. And I pay rent." "Absolutely not." "Sam, Abigail, you just had a baby. Let me do this, please." She agreed because she had no other choice, and Sam knew it. He hated that she was backed into a corner, but he wouldn't waste the opportunity to prove himself. Moving them in felt surreal. His modern, empty penthouse suddenly filled with children's voices, baby crying, the chaos of real life. His housekeeper, Rosa, took one look at Harry and Henry and immediately started child-proofing with the efficiency of someone who'd raised 5 of her own. The boys were overwhelmed. They ran from room to room, discovering the game room, the library with floor-to-ceiling windows, the kitchen bigger than their entire shelter room had been. "Mr. Sam," Henry breathed, "are you a king?" "No, buddy. Just someone who's been very lucky." "Can we really stay here?" "As long as you need to." Abigail was installed in the largest guest suite with Ruby's bassinet beside the bed. Sam had Rosa stock it with everything a new mother might need: diapers, formula, even though Abigail was breastfeeding, extra blankets, comfortable chairs for night feedings. "This is too much," Abigail said from the bed where she was supposed to be resting. "It's enough," Sam corrected. "For once in your life, let something be enough." Those first days were chaos. Ruby cried constantly, that newborn cry that signaled a baby learning how to exist in the world. Abigail was exhausted, her body recovering, trying to establish breastfeeding while managing 2 active boys. Harry started having nightmares about his mama disappearing. Henry regressed slightly, needing extra reassurance. Sam handled all of it. He walked the penthouse at 3 a.m. with Ruby when Abigail needed sleep, learning every inch of his home while singing off-key lullabies. He sat with Harry during nightmares, promising over and over that Mama was just in the next room. He helped Henry with his fears, showing him it was okay to be scared sometimes. Rosa watched this transformation with knowing eyes. "You're good with them, Mr. Sam. I'm faking it." All parents fake it. The good ones just admit it. She handed him a bottle for Ruby's supplemental feeding. "That woman in there is watching you, testing to see if you'll leave when it gets hard." "I won't." "Then show her. Not with words, with showing up." Sam showed up. Every morning, he checked on Abigail before heading to work. Had she slept? Did she need anything? Every evening, he came home and took over childcare completely so she could rest. He learned that Harry needed firm boundaries and Henry needed extra affection. He learned that Ruby preferred being held facing out so she could see everything. He learned that Abigail took her coffee black now instead of sweet like she used to. Another thing, the years had changed. 2 weeks in, Sam found Abigail in the living room late one night, rocking Ruby and crying silently. He sat beside her without speaking, just present. "I'm so tired," she finally whispered. "I love her so much, but I'm so tired, and I feel like I'm failing everyone. The boys need attention I can't give them. Ruby needs me constantly. I can't even think about going back to work, but the bills keep coming and your charity has an expiration date." "Stop." Sam gently took Ruby, who'd fallen asleep mid-feeding. "You're not failing anyone. You're recovering from childbirth while raising 3 children. You're not supposed to be perfect. You're supposed to be surviving. But the apartment repairs are taking longer than expected and I can't keep staying here." "Why not?" "Because this isn't my life. This penthouse, the housekeeper, the casual way you handle everything like money solves every problem. This isn't real. It could be, if you'd let it." Abigail looked at him with exhausted eyes. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying stop putting a timeline on this. Stop treating this like temporary charity. You're here. The kids are safe. Ruby is healthy. Why does it have to end?" "Because nothing good lasts. Because every man who's promised me stability has eventually decided I wasn't worth the trouble." She was crying again, hormones and exhaustion overwhelming her usual control. "I can't let myself believe this is permanent, Sam. I can't survive losing it when you change your mind." Sam wanted to argue, to promise, to swear he'd never leave. But words were cheap. He'd already proven that once. Instead, he just sat with her, holding her daughter, being present in the moment. "Ask me again tomorrow if I'm still here," he finally said. "And the day after. And the day after that. Eventually, maybe you'll believe it." The next morning brought new challenges. Harry came down with a stomach virus, spending most of the day miserable and needing his mama. But Abigail was still recovering, and Ruby needed constant attention. Sam stayed home from work, handling Harry's care while Rosa helped with Henry and Ruby. He learned how to comfort a sick child, how to clean up messes without making them feel bad, how to make the kind of boring soup that helps upset stomachs. By evening, Harry was sleeping peacefully, and Sam was exhausted in a way board meetings never achieved. Abigail found him in Harry's room, sitting in a chair watching the boy sleep. "You stayed home." He needed someone. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." Sam stood, stretched his aching back. "He's a kid. He's sick. Someone had to be here." "Dominic never stayed home when they were sick. Said he couldn't miss work for every little thing." "Dominic was an idiot." Abigail laughed, small but genuine. "Yeah, he was." She moved into the room, checking Harry's forehead for fever. "Thank you. For today. For all of this. You don't have to keep thanking me. I don't know what else to do. I'm not used to people helping without expecting something in return." Sam looked at her in the dim light from Harry's nightlight. "I'm not expecting anything. I'm just trying to be what I should have been 5 years ago." "You can't change the past." "No, but I can try not to repeat it." They stood in comfortable silence, both watching Harry sleep, before heading back to their separate rooms. But something had shifted. The wall between them wasn't gone, but it had a few more cracks. 3 weeks into their arrangement, the landlord called. The apartment repairs would take another month, maybe more. Abigail hung up the phone and started crying, overwhelmed by the constant setbacks. Sam found her on the terrace, Ruby in a carrier against her chest, staring at the city. "The apartment isn't going to be ready, I heard. So you stay here. I can't keep taking advantage of your guilt." "You're not taking advantage. You're accepting help. There's a difference." He leaned against the railing beside her. "Abigail, stop fighting this. Stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. Just be here. Live here. Let the boys settle in. Let Ruby grow. Give yourself time to heal." What happens when you want your space back? When you meet someone who doesn't want your ex-girlfriend and her kids living here? "Then I'll deal with that if it happens. But right now this is working. The boys are happy. Ruby is thriving. You're healing. Why destroy that because you're scared of hypothetical future problems?" She didn't answer, just stood there in the cold air, swaying slightly as Ruby slept against her. Sam stayed beside her, not pushing, just present. Finally, she spoke. "Okay, we'll stay, but only until I can work again and save enough for a real place. This is still temporary. Whatever you need to tell yourself." That night, after everyone was asleep, Sam sat in his living room and looked around. Children's toys were scattered across his expensive rug. Bottles were drying in his designer kitchen. Baby blankets were draped over his imported furniture. His perfect empty penthouse had become a home, and for the first time in 5 years, he felt like he was exactly where he belonged. Chapter 6. The choosing Sam Brown had spent 33 years as his mother's son. But the woman who'd survived Eleanor's cruelty showed him that family wasn't blood, it was choice, and it was time to choose. Eleanor showed up unannounced on a Thursday morning. Sam had just gotten Harry and Henry off to school. They were attending a private academy near his building now, Sam covering tuition without telling Abigail the full cost. He was making coffee when his doorman buzzed up, sounding apologetic. "Mr. Brown, your mother is here. She's insisting." Sam closed his eyes. "Send her up." He met Eleanor at the elevator, blocking her entrance to the penthouse. She was dressed for battle in designer armor, her expression ice-cold fury. "What is that woman doing in your home?" "Good morning, Mother. Would you like coffee?" "Don't play games with me, Samuel. I've been hearing rumors for weeks. You moved that gold digger and her bastards into your home. Have you lost your mind?" Sam's jaw tightened. "Lower your voice. Abigail is resting, and the baby needs quiet." Eleanor's laugh was sharp enough to cut. "Abigail, you're on first-name terms with the woman I paid to disappear? And what baby? Don't tell me you've taken on her latest mistake too." Something in Sam snapped. "That mistake is a month-old infant. Those bastards are 2 boys who've been abandoned by every man in their life, and that gold digger is a woman you destroyed because she wasn't rich enough for your standards." "I saved you. You ruined me." Sam's voice rose, and he didn't care. "You paid off the woman I loved while she was pregnant with my child. You drove her away and she miscarried alone. Then you chose Lillian for me, and she made my life hell for 4 years. Every decision you've made for me has been poison." "That pregnancy was probably a lie." "It wasn't a lie. I've seen the medical records. She lost our baby at 11 weeks because stress and your money damaged her body." Sam stepped forward, and Eleanor actually stepped back. "Now she has 3 children who need stability. I'm providing it. If you have a problem with that, there's the elevator." "You're making a mistake. That woman will bleed you dry." "That woman hasn't asked me for a single thing. She tries to pay me back for groceries, Mother. She apologizes for using my electricity. She's the least materialistic person I've ever met, which is probably why you hate her so much. She makes you look shallow by comparison." Eleanor's face flushed red. "I will not stand here and be insulted." "Then leave. Leave my home. Leave my life. You're not welcome here anymore." "I'm your mother. You were my mother. Now you're the woman who destroyed the only real thing I've ever had. We're done, Eleanor. Completely done. You'll regret this. When she leaves you, when those children disappoint you, when you realize I was right all along, then I'll regret it alone, because you won't be there to say I told you so. You'll be wherever people go when they've burned every bridge they have." Eleanor drew herself up, gathering her dignity like a cloak. Fine. Throw away your family for that woman. But don't come crying to me when it all falls apart. I'm removing you from the will, from the family trust, from everything. I already have everything that matters. She left without another word, her heels clicking on marble like gunshots. Sam stood there until the elevator doors closed, then went back inside to find Abigail standing in the hallway with Ruby in her arms, tears on her face. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. I should have done it 5 years ago. Sam ran his hands through his hair. She's right, though. I'll be cut off. The trust fund, the inheritance, probably several business connections. It's going to get ugly. Then I'll leave. Take the kids and... No. He crossed to her in 3 strides. Absolutely not. You're not leaving. She wants you to leave. That's what she's counting on, that I'll choose money over you again. I won't. Abigail adjusted Ruby in her arms, the baby starting to fuss. Sam, I can't ask you to give up your entire life. You didn't ask. I chose. There's a difference. He gently touched Ruby's head, that instinctive gesture he'd developed over weeks of helping with her. These kids deserve better than what they've gotten. You deserve better. If Eleanor can't see that, then she doesn't deserve to be part of our lives. Our lives. Sam realized what he'd said. If you'll let me be part of them. I know I'm not their father. I know I have no claim to any of you, but I want to be here. Before Abigail could answer, the front door burst open. Harry and Henry ran in, home early from school, their teacher following with an apologetic expression. Mr. Brown, I'm so sorry. Harry was involved in an incident. I punched Lucas, Harry announced, not quite proudly but not quite apologetically either. He said our mama was poor and we were charity cases living here because she trapped you. Sam knelt down to Harry's level, trying to look stern. We don't punch people even when they're being mean. But he said, I know what he said. Was he right? Harry faltered. We do live here because Mama can't work and you're helping us. Are you a charity case? No? That's right. You're my family. There's a difference. Sam looked at the teacher. I'll handle this. After she left, Sam sat both boys down in the living room. Abigail joined them, Ruby now sleeping against her shoulder. It felt like a family meeting, something real and important. Listen, Sam started. Some people are going to say mean things about us, about your mama, about why you're here, about me. They're going to be wrong, but that doesn't mean it won't hurt. Like how Daddy Dominic's family said we were mistakes, Henry asked quietly. Exactly like that, and it's not true. But punching people who say mean things doesn't fix anything, Harry. You know what does? What? Proving them wrong by being amazing, by being kind when they're cruel, by showing them that you're exactly who you're supposed to be, regardless of what they think. Harry considered this. That's harder than punching. Yeah, it is. But you're tough enough to do it. They talked for another hour about school and bullies and what family meant. Eventually the boys wandered off to their rooms, and Sam was left with Abigail in the fading afternoon light. You called them your family. I did, if that's okay. Is it true, or are you just saying it to make them feel better? Sam looked at her, really looked at her. She was recovering from childbirth, exhausted from night feedings, wearing yoga pants and one of his old shirts because she'd come here with almost nothing. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She had no makeup on. She was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. It's true. You're my family, all of you. Harry with his fierce protective instincts, and Henry with his big heart, and Ruby with her midnight concerts. You, with your strength and your refusal to take charity and your love for those kids that makes me understand what courage actually means. He moved closer. I know I don't deserve you. I know I failed you. But if you'll let me, I'll spend the rest of my life being the man I should have been. What about when it gets hard? When the money's really gone and society really does cut you off, and you remember why you chose differently before? Then we'll figure it out together, because, Abigail, I was miserable with all that money and status. I'm happy now at 3 a.m. with a crying baby and 2 boys who need help with homework and a woman who still hasn't forgiven me. This is where I want to be." Abigail was quiet for a long time. Ruby woke up and started fussing, and Sam automatically reached for her. Abigail handed her over, watching as he settled the baby against his shoulder and started the gentle bounce walk that calmed her. "You're good at this. I have a good teacher. Sam, I'm not ready to forgive you. Maybe I never will be completely. What happened 5 years ago broke something in me. Then Dominic shattered what was left. I know. But you're here. You're showing up. You cut off your mother for us. You're learning how to calm a baby and mediate playground fights and make breakfast without burning the kitchen down." She smiled slightly. "That's worth something." "What's it worth?" "Time. A chance to see if this is real. If you really meant it when you said family." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't love. Not yet. Maybe not ever again. But it was possibility, and Sam would take it. He'd take whatever she was willing to give and prove himself worthy of more, one day at a time. That night, after the boys were in bed and Ruby was sleeping, Sam found Abigail in the kitchen making tea. She moved easier now, the worst of the recovery behind her. "Eleanor called," she said without preamble, left a voicemail, said if I leave you alone, she'll set up a trust fund for the kids, give us enough money that I'd never have to work again. Sam's blood ran cold. "What did you say?" "I deleted the message." Abigail met his eyes. "I don't want her money. I don't want anything from people who use it as a weapon. If we're doing this, if we're trying to be a family, then we do it without her." "Are we? Trying to be a family? I don't know, but I'm willing to find out." She moved closer. "Don't make me regret this, Sam Brown. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you don't." She went to bed soon after, and Sam stayed up watching the city lights and thinking about choices. He'd chosen wrong once. It had cost him everything that mattered. Now he was choosing right, and it was costing him everything that didn't. Fair trade. Chapter 7. The War for What Remains. Dominic Ashford had discarded his family like yesterday's news, but when another man claimed his children, suddenly fatherhood was worth fighting for. The custody papers arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a private courier who'd obviously been paid for discretion. Sam signed for them and immediately called his lawyer, reading through the demands while his blood pressure climbed. Dominic wanted full custody of all 3 children. He claimed Abigail was an unfit mother, unstable, living with a man she barely knew, exposing the children to an unsafe environment. He wanted Harry, Henry, and Ruby placed with his family while they sorted out appropriate arrangements. Sam found Abigail in the nursery, changing Ruby. One look at his face, and she froze. What happened? He handed her the papers and watched her face drain of color as she read. Her hands started shaking so badly she had to put them down. "He wants to take them, all of them, even Ruby." Her voice was barely a whisper. "He abandoned Ruby before she was born. He hasn't seen Harry and Henry in months, and now he wants custody." Sam pulled out his phone. "I'm calling my lawyer. We'll fight this." "With what? He has resources, family connections, judges in his pocket." Abigail picked up Ruby, holding her like someone might snatch the baby away at any moment. "I'm a single mother living on your charity. How does that look to a judge?" "It looks like a mother rebuilding her life with support from someone who cares about her." "It looks like I traded one rich man for another." She was crying now, angry tears that she tried to wipe away with one hand while clutching Ruby with the other. "His lawyers will twist everything. They'll make it sound like I'm using you, like I'm unstable, like I'm exactly what his mother always said I was." Sam wanted to comfort her but knew she'd pull away. Instead, he focused on the practical. "We document everything. School records showing Harry and Henry thriving, medical records showing Ruby's progress, character witnesses. We prove you're an excellent mother and Dominic is doing this out of spite." It won't be enough. She was probably right. Dominic's family had connections Sam was just beginning to understand. They'd already started a whisper campaign. Sam had heard it at work, at the club, in the subtle ways society closed ranks. The story being spun was that Abigail had trapped Dominic, then jumped to Sam when better money came along. His phone rang. Gerald Thorne, his business partner. "Sam, we need to talk about this situation." "There's nothing to discuss. Dominic abandoned those children. He doesn't get to take them back when it's convenient. My nephew made mistakes, yes, but he's trying to rectify them. His family can provide stability." His family called those boys mistakes to their faces. They told Abigail she wasn't good enough. They're the reason Dominic left in the first place. Be that as it may, the optics are terrible. A woman moving from one wealthy man to another, bringing her children into your home within months of her divorce. You must see how it looks. I see how it is. A mother protecting her children from a man who threw them away. If you can't see that, then we don't have anything else to discuss. He hung up before Gerald could respond. Abigail was watching him with haunted eyes. This is going to cost you everything. Your business relationships, your reputation, possibly your company. Then it costs me everything. Sam finally crossed to her, putting his hands on her shoulders gently. Abigail, listen to me. I will not let Dominic take those children. Whatever it takes, whatever I have to sacrifice, we're going to win this. How? We're not married. You're not their father. You have no legal standing. She stopped abruptly, understanding dawning on her face. No. It's the only way to give me legal standing. If we're married, if I adopt them, no. Absolutely not. I'm not marrying you so you can play hero. Abigail stepped back, nearly stumbling. I already married one man for the wrong reasons. I won't do it again. Even if it means keeping your children? The question hung between them like a blade. Sam hated himself for asking it, for using her fear as leverage. But Dominic's lawyers would destroy her in court. A single mother, no resources, living with her ex-boyfriend. They'd paint her as unstable, immoral, unfit. A married couple providing a stable home was much harder to attack. This isn't fair, Abigail whispered. You shouldn't have to marry me to help me. I shouldn't have to marry anyone to keep my own children. You're right. It's not fair. But it's practical. Sam pulled out his phone again. I'm calling my lawyer now. We'll draw up a prenup protecting you. Separate finances, clear terms. This doesn't have to be real, it just has to be legal. And after, when we win, if we win, then we figure it out. Maybe we stay married, maybe we divorce. But first, we keep those kids safe. The custody hearing was set for 3 weeks away. Sam's lawyer, a sharp woman named Diana, who'd built her career on impossible cases, laid out their strategy. We need to present you as a stable, loving family unit. Dominic will argue that Abigail is a flight risk, that she's mercenary, that the children don't have a real home. We counter with marriage, adoption proceedings, school records, medical records, character witnesses. Can we win? Abigail asked. Honestly, it's 50-50. Dominic has resources and connections, but he also abandoned his children publicly. That plays badly, even with sympathetic judges. They married 3 days later at City Hall. No flowers, no party, no romance, just signatures on paper that gave Sam legal standing to fight for children who weren't his blood but felt like his heart. Harry and Henry were there, dressed in their school clothes, confused but trying to understand. They'd explained it as simply as possible. Sam was going to be their legal daddy, so no one could take them away from Mama. But what about Daddy Dominic? Henry had asked. Daddy Dominic made choices that hurt you, Abigail had explained carefully. Sam is making choices to protect you. That's what parents do. So Sam is our real daddy now? Harry's question was pure hope. Sam had knelt down to their level. I want to be, if that's okay with you. They'd both nodded and Harry had whispered, Promise you won't leave like the others. Promise. Now, standing in the courthouse with a judge droning through marriage vows, Sam looked at Abigail in her simple dress. Not white, not celebratory, just a dress she'd owned before all this started, and felt the weight of what they were doing. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. They should have had time to rebuild trust, to fall in love again if that was even possible. Instead, they were playing defense against a man who wanted to hurt her one last time. "I do," Abigail said when prompted, her voice steady but her hand trembling in his. "I do," Sam echoed, and meant it more than he'd meant anything at his first wedding. The judge pronounced them married, and Sam kissed her cheek because anything more felt like taking advantage. They signed the papers, the boys cheered because they thought it was happy, and just like that, they were a family on paper. The fight for making it real was just beginning. Chapter 8. The Battle for What Matters. Abigail Grace had fought poverty and heartbreak with quiet dignity, but when Dominic Ashford came for her sons, he'd learned that a mother's fury was louder than money could ever speak. The custody hearing was brutal. Dominic's lawyers painted Abigail as everything she'd feared, a gold digger, unstable, moving from man to man. They brought up her past, the money Eleanor had paid her, the speed of her relationship with Sam. They made it sound sordid and calculated. Diana countered with medical records from Ruby's birth, testimony from the boys' teachers about their progress, character witnesses who spoke to Abigail's devotion to her children. She made Dominic's abandonment sound exactly as cruel as it had been, announcing a divorce at a Christmas party, leaving his pregnant wife in the snow, refusing to see his children for months. The judge listened to everything, asked pointed questions, and finally called for a lunch recess to review the evidence. They waited in a conference room, Abigail pacing while Sam tried to project calm he didn't feel. Ruby slept in a carrier, oblivious to the battle being waged over her future. "They're going to take them," Abigail kept repeating. "They're going to take my babies." "They're not. You don't know that. Dominic's family has connections. They have judges in their pocket. They'll make me look like exactly what his mother always said I was, a poor girl who trapped their son." She stopped pacing, facing Sam with wild eyes. "What if I lose them? What if they give Harry and Henry to Dominic and he destroys them the way he tried to destroy me?" Sam stood, crossed to her, took her shoulders gently. "That's not going to happen. You're an incredible mother. The boys are thriving. Ruby is healthy. Any judge who can't see that is blind. Blind judges make rulings too." Before Sam could respond, Diana came back in, her expression carefully neutral. "The judge wants to see the family together, all of you, including the boys and Ruby." Rosa had been watching Harry and Henry in another waiting room. They brought them in now, along with Ruby, who was starting to fuss. The boys looked scared, holding hands, their usual energy dampened by the courthouse atmosphere. The judge's chambers were less formal than the courtroom. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, but a no-nonsense expression. She gestured for them to sit. "Mr. and Mrs. Brown, I've reviewed all the evidence. I have some questions." She looked at Sam. "Mr. Brown, you've known these children for how long?" 2 months, Your Honor." "And you're prepared to legally adopt all 3? "Yes, Your Honor, immediately." The judge turned to Harry and Henry. "Boys, do you understand what's happening here?" Harry nodded, his voice small. "Daddy Dominic wants us to live with him, but we want to stay with Mama and Sam." "Why?" "Because Sam doesn't leave," Henry said simply. "Even when it's hard, even when we're scared or sick or having bad dreams, he stays." The judge's expression softened slightly. "What about your father? Don't you want to see him?" Harry and Henry looked at each other, some silent communication passing between them. Finally, Harry spoke. "He stopped being our daddy when he said we were mistakes. Sam is our daddy now. He chose us." The silence in the chambers was profound. The judge made notes, her face unreadable. Then she looked at Dominic, who'd been sitting with his lawyers, looking uncomfortable. "Mr. Ashford, when did you last see these children?" It's been several months. The separation was difficult. You announced your divorce at a party and left your pregnant wife standing in the snow. Is that correct?" Dominic's lawyer interjected, but the judge held up a hand. "I'm asking Mr. Ashford directly. Did you abandon your wife and children publicly?" It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, the judge said coldly. I've reviewed the evidence. You haven't seen Harry in 4 months. You've never met Ruby. You filed for divorce while your wife was pregnant, demanded she terminate the pregnancy, and when she refused, you humiliated her publicly. Now you want custody. My family can provide stability. Your family called these children mistakes. Your mother has publicly stated she never accepted them. You want me to give her custody? The judge looked disgusted. Mr. Ashford, I don't know what you're trying to accomplish here, but using your children as weapons in whatever vendetta you have against your ex-wife is not going to work in my courtroom. She turned to Sam and Abigail. Mrs. Brown, your marriage is recent, very recent. That concerns me. Your Honor, Abigail spoke up, her voice clear despite her fear. I married Sam to give him legal standing to help protect my children, but it's more than that. He's been there for them in ways their biological father never was. He sits up with them when they have nightmares. He helps with homework. He learned how to comfort a colicky baby so I could sleep. He cut off his own mother when she tried to hurt us. He sacrificed his business relationships and his inheritance to defend us. That's what a father does. The judge considered this. Mr. Brown, is this marriage real, or is it a legal strategy? Sam looked at Abigail, then at Harry and Henry, then at Ruby sleeping in her carrier. Your Honor, I married Abigail to protect these children. But it's real. These kids, they're mine now, not biologically, but in every way that matters. I'm not going anywhere. The judge made more notes, then sat back. Here's my ruling. Custody remains with Mrs. Brown. Mr. Ashford, you're granted supervised visitation, but given your abandonment of these children and your family's documented hostility toward them, I'm limiting it severely. You'll have 1 supervised visit per month until you can demonstrate genuine commitment to their well-being. Your Honor, Dominic's lawyer started, my ruling stands. Furthermore, Mr. Brown, your adoption petition is approved pending finalization of paperwork. These children need stability and you're providing it. Mr. Ashford, you had a family. You threw it away. Don't waste my court's time trying to reclaim it now that someone else values what you didn't. It was over. They'd won. Abigail collapsed into Sam's arms, sobbing. Harry and Henry wrapped around both of them. Ruby woke up and started crying, and somehow that made it more real. All of them, tangled together, surviving another battle. Outside the courthouse, Dominic's family was already working on damage control, but Sam didn't care. He had what mattered. The woman he'd never stopped loving, and 3 children who needed him to be better than every man who'd failed them before. Thank you, Abigail whispered against his chest. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for staying. Always, Sam promised. From now on, it's always. Chapter 9. The House That Guilt Built. Sam Brown had finally gotten everything he'd thrown away 5 years ago. A wife he loved, sons who called him daddy. But the woman wearing his ring knew the difference between a marriage and a contract. Life settled into routine after the custody battle. Legally, Sam was Harry and Henry's father. Legally, Abigail was his wife. Legally, they were a family. The reality was more complicated. They still had separate bedrooms. Abigail still kept emotional distance. Every night, Sam went to his room and she went to hers, and the space between them felt like an ocean despite being only a hallway apart. But during the day, they played their parts perfectly. Sam went to work, having lost several clients after choosing Abigail over business connections, but keeping enough to stay afloat. Abigail started looking into going back to work once Ruby was older. Rosa helped manage the household. Harry and Henry thrived in their school, making friends, bringing home art projects they proudly displayed on the massive refrigerator. From the outside, they looked like any other family in Manhattan. From the inside, they felt like actors waiting for someone to call cut. Sam tried not to push. He'd help with the boys' homework, take them to the park on weekends, handle night wakings when Ruby fussed. He proved himself through actions, not words, showing up every single day without demanding recognition. But he wanted more. He wanted his wife to look at him without wariness. He wanted to erase the careful distance she maintained. He wanted what they'd had 5 years ago, before he'd been stupid enough to let it go. One Saturday afternoon, Harry brought home a school assignment: draw your family. He worked on it at the kitchen table with fierce concentration, while Sam made lunch and Abigail fed Ruby. When Harry finished, he held it up proudly. 4 stick figures, Mama with long hair, 2 boys, a baby, and 1 tall figure labelled Daddy Sam. "Can I show Mama?" Harry asked. "Of course, buddy." Sam watched from the kitchen as Harry presented his drawing. Abigail stared at it for a long moment, her eyes filling with tears, then pulled Harry into a hug. When she looked up, her eyes met Sam's, and something raw and vulnerable passed between them. That night, after the boys were asleep and Ruby was down, Abigail found Sam on the terrace overlooking the city. It was cold, winter giving way to early spring, but he'd needed air. "Harry's teacher called," she said quietly. "Wanted to make sure everything was okay at home. Apparently Harry's been telling everyone you're his real father. Biological father. She wanted to clarify the facts for her records." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That biologically, Dominic is their father. But in every way that matters, you are." Abigail stood beside him at the railing, both of them watching the city lights. "The teacher understood. Said Harry talks about you constantly. How you help with his science projects. How you taught him to ride a bike without training wheels. How you never yell even when he makes mistakes." Sam didn't know what to say to that. "I don't know how to do this," Abigail admitted. "How to be married to someone who actually shows up. How to trust that you won't wake up one day and realize this is too much work, that we're too broken." "You're not broken." "Yes, I am. We all are. Harry has nightmares about being abandoned. Henry asks every morning if you're still going to be here when he gets home from school. Ruby is too young to remember Dominic, but she'll grow up knowing her biological father didn't want her." Her voice cracked. "And me? I'm terrified every single day that this is temporary, that you're going to leave." Sam turned to face her fully. "How many days do I have to stay before you believe I'm not leaving?" "I don't know. 100? 1,000? Maybe forever?" She was crying now, and Sam ached to hold her but didn't dare. "I'm trying, Sam. I'm trying to let you in. But every time I start to feel safe, I remember your mother's money. I remember Dominic walking away. I remember every man who promised me forever and meant until it got hard. Then don't trust my promises. Trust my alarm clock that goes off every morning. Trust that I show up to Harry's parent-teacher conferences. Trust that I know Ruby prefers her bottles slightly warm and Henry needs his sandwich cut diagonally. Trust the days, not the words." They stood in the cold, the city humming below them, both trying to figure out how to bridge the gap between legal marriage and real partnership. "I want to believe you," Abigail finally whispered. "I want to believe this is real, but I'm so scared." "Then be scared, but be scared here, with me. Let me prove it day by day until you're not scared anymore." She nodded, not trusting herself to speak, and went back inside. Sam stayed on the terrace for a while longer, thinking about patience and proving and the long road between tolerance and trust. The next morning, Henry crawled into Sam's bed at dawn. "Are you awake?" "I am now, buddy. What's up?" "I had a dream that you left like Daddy Dominic, that you said we were too much trouble and you didn't want to be our daddy anymore." Henry's voice was small, scared. "Will you leave?" Sam pulled Henry close. "No, I'm not leaving. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever." "But Daddy Dominic said that too, before he left." And there it was, the fundamental fear these children carried. Sam had no perfect answer, no guarantee that would erase years of abandonment. He just had today, and tomorrow, and the day after that. "You're right. Daddy Dominic did say that, and he broke his promise. That was wrong. That hurt you." Sam made sure Henry was looking at him. "I can't prove to you with words that I'm different. Words are easy, but I can show you with days, with being here for breakfast, and helping with homework, and tucking you in at night. Eventually, maybe you'll believe it. How long? However long it takes. Henry snuggled closer, seemingly satisfied with that answer. They lay there until Harry wandered in, then Abigail with Ruby, and suddenly they were all piled in Sam's bed, a tangle of family that hadn't existed 2 months ago. Abigail looked at him over the boys' heads, and something had shifted in her expression. Not love, not yet, but the beginning of belief. 3 months into their marriage, Abigail started nursing school. She'd been looking into programs, and Rosa had offered to watch Ruby during classes. The boys were in school all day, and Abigail was ready to start building something that was hers alone. Sam encouraged it completely. "You should absolutely do it. You'll be an incredible nurse. It's expensive. 3 years of school, and I'd need to work part-time for clinical hours. We'll figure it out. Abigail, you don't have to ask permission. This is your home, your life. If you want to finish school, do it." Just like that, just like that. She studied him with those eyes that had seen too much, looking for the catch, the condition, the price. Finding none, she slowly smiled. "Okay, then I'm doing it." That night, Sam lay awake in his room thinking about progress. They weren't in love, not like they'd been before, but they were building something steadier, something based on partnership instead of passion. Maybe that was better. Maybe love that survived required different foundations than love that was young and easy. His phone buzzed. A text from Abigail in the next room. "Thank you for believing in me." He texted back, "Always." Another message. "The boys want to know if we can get a dog." Sam laughed silently. "Absolutely not. That's what I said. They're plotting against us." United front? United front. It was such a small thing, texting his wife about parenting decisions in the middle of the night. But it felt like everything. They were becoming a team, not a romance, not yet, but partners in survival, in raising children, in building a life from the wreckage both of them had left behind. And for Sam, that was enough to keep showing up day after day, proving that some men actually kept their promises. Chapter 10. Foundations, not fairy tales. Abigail Grace had learned that happy endings were for people who'd never been abandoned, but the man reading bedtime stories while she studied for nursing exams was teaching her that maybe happiness wasn't an ending at all. 6 months into their marriage, life had found its rhythm. Abigail attended nursing classes while Rosa watched Ruby. Harry and Henry were thriving in school. Sam had rebuilt his business after losing clients who'd sided with his mother, finding new partners who valued integrity over social connections. They were a team now, not lovers, not yet, but partners in the daily chaos of raising 3 children and building lives that felt solid. The separate bedrooms remained, though. That final wall neither of them knew how to breach. Until the night Abigail had a nightmare. Sam woke to crying. Not Ruby, but Abigail's voice, raw and terrified, coming from her room. He ran, finding her tangled in sheets, fighting invisible demons. "Hey, hey, it's okay." He sat on the edge of her bed, hands hovering, not sure if touching would help or hurt. "Abigail, wake up, you're safe." She came awake, gasping, tears streaming down her face. For a moment she didn't recognize him, still caught in whatever hell she'd been reliving. Then awareness returned. "Sorry, bad dream." What was it about? Losing them. All of them. Dominic taking the kids, you leaving, everything falling apart. Her voice was small, broken. It felt so real. Sam made a decision. He lay down beside her, on top of the covers, maintaining that final boundary. "Tell me about it, get it out." She talked for an hour, purging the fear that lived in her bones. Sam listened, asked questions, stayed present. When she finally wound down, exhausted, she turned to face him in the darkness. "I'm still scared, every day, that this will end." "I know. I don't know if I'll ever stop being scared." "That's okay. Be scared, but be here. Keep letting me show up. Eventually your fear will have to compete with reality." She was quiet for a moment. "Stay? Just tonight. I don't want to be alone." Sam stayed, and they slept like that. holding hands across a sea of blankets, neither willing to move closer but unable to let go. Morning brought Henry jumping on the bed, demanding breakfast. Harry followed, then Ruby's cries from the nursery. The moment shattered into domestic chaos, but something had shifted. Over the following weeks, the walls between them continued to crack. They fell into partnership naturally, Sam handling breakfast while Abigail got the boys ready, taking turns with Ruby's night feedings, splitting homework duty, making decisions together about everything from discipline to what to watch on Friday movie nights. At Harry's school presentation about families, he stood proudly with his poster covered in photos of all of them. My mama is in nursing school. My daddy Sam works hard but always comes home. My brother Henry makes us laugh. My sister Ruby is learning to crawl. We're not perfect, but we're real. The teacher called afterward, her voice warm. Harry's presentation was beautiful. He clearly feels very secure. They did feel like a family now. The legal paperwork had been real for months, but the emotional reality was finally catching up. One evening, Sam found Abigail on the terrace, Ruby asleep in a carrier against her chest, staring at the city. What are you thinking about? 5 years ago, how different everything could have been. Sam's heart sank. I know, I'm sorry. Let me finish. She turned to face him. It could have been different, but maybe we needed this. Maybe I needed to become strong enough to stand on my own before I could stand with someone else. I don't understand. That girl 5 years ago would have let you rescue her, would have lived in your shadow, dependent on your love, never becoming her own person. She touched Ruby's sleeping head. This woman? I'm going to nursing school on my own merit. I fought for my children and won. I'm building a life I chose. You think we needed 5 years of hell for this? I think we needed to become people strong enough to actually make this work. She stepped closer. Sam, I'm not ready to say I've completely forgiven you, but I'm ready to say I want to try. Really try. Try what? This. Us. Being married for real, not just on paper. Sam felt his heart stop. Are you sure? No, but I trust you. That's enough for now. That night, they moved Sam's things into her room. Their room now. Harry and Henry helped by carrying socks and offering commentary on every decision. Ruby watched from her bouncer, drooling happily. Now you're really married, Henry announced. Like in movies. We were really married before, Abigail corrected gently. Yeah, but now you're married. That night, they lay in bed together, their bed, awkward and uncertain. This is weird, Abigail said. So weird. I don't know the rules. We make them up as we go. They fell asleep holding hands, and it felt like a beginning rather than an ending. The next months brought more progress. Small touches became natural. Sam's hand on Abigail's back as they navigated crowds, her fingers linking with his during the boys' school plays. They learned each other's rhythms again, building something new from the ruins of what they'd been. The day Abigail got her acceptance letter for the advanced nursing track, she ran to Sam's office crying happy tears. Full scholarship based on my exams. He spun her around, both of them laughing, and when he set her down, they were close enough to kiss. Neither moved away. I'm proud of you, Sam said quietly. I couldn't have done this without you. Yes, you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to. The kiss, when it finally came weeks later, was soft and tentative. Two people, learning each other again after years of being strangers. It wasn't passionate or desperate. It was the kiss of partners, of people building toward something real. 8 months into their marriage, on an ordinary Tuesday, Abigail looked at Sam over breakfast chaos. Henry spilling juice, Harry arguing about screen time, Ruby throwing cereal, and realized something fundamental had changed. She wasn't waiting for him to leave anymore. I love you, she said, surprising herself as much as him. Sam froze mid-coffee pour. What? I love you, not the way I did before. That was young and naive. This is different, steadier, built on showing up and staying and proving yourself day after day. She smiled. I love you. Sam put down the coffee pot, crossed to her, took her face in his hands. I never stopped loving you, not for one day in 5 years. I know. I finally believe it. They kissed while the boys made exaggerated gagging noises, and Ruby banged her high chair tray, and it was perfect because it was real. That night, after the children were finally asleep, they lay in their bed, truly theirs now, and talked about the future. "What do we tell them?" Abigail asked. "About how we got here, when they're older and ask why we got married? The truth, that I made mistakes, that you survived them, that we found our way back to each other through 3 children and enough stubbornness to outlast every doubt." Sam pulled her closer. "That love isn't always romantic. Sometimes it's choosing to show up at 3 a.m. when the baby won't sleep. Sometimes it's cutting off your mother to protect your family. Sometimes it's just being present, day after day, until trust becomes love, becomes forever." That's a long answer. It's a long story. Abigail laughed, the sound free and genuine. "Yeah, it is." Through the windows, the city glittered. Inside, their children slept soundly. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, homework battles, toddler tantrums, the endless juggling of work and school and family, but they'd face it together, not perfect, not easy, but real, and real was enough.